Yeah. All right. So just starting the recording, and let's go ahead and do this demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Here we are. All right. And as you can see, I have Rhino up right now. This was my uh, light vessel not too long ago. And what I've done, you can see here, is I've started to slice it open with what I call a clipping plane, what Rhino calls a clipping plane. So this is a plane that basically serves as a plan or a section cut. And you can see that not only do you see this sort of rectangle and perspective view that represents the sort of plane that's slicing or clipping, but there's also a set of direction arrows showing which parts of the model are visible, and then everything on the flip side of those arrows then is invisible, right? Um, and then last but not least, I can also format how I show what's being cut through, right? So in this case, I've just added a kind of a, yeah, it's all right, 45-degree hatch, and told it to sort of trace the boundaries. Um, and sometimes these look cleaner than others. This is a nice, these are those corners where we just have a nice continuous darker line around everything that's being cut through. Here, where you see that I have um, two masses, two volumes being cut through at the same time. You start to see all the edges. They look a little redundant. Same thing over here. This might need to be cleaned up a little bit in a drawing, right? But so let's talk a little bit about what sections and plans are, then how we can begin to use Rhino's tools to sort of cut these things open and see what we have on the inside. All right. But anyway, here's the clipping plane, and then of course I can move the clipping plane even dynamically. It's cutting a section, clipping one side of the plane and leaving the other visible, so we can start to see inside. Of course, I can change the orientation and cut the section the opposite direction if I need to, right? What's nice about this is it's a kind of a nice figure ground. You can sort of very clearly see where there's mass being sliced through, and then on the inside where we have volume, right? So it's kind of a, let's see here. This must not be closed or something. It's not being cut through, but all right. Anyway, let's see. Da, 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 da. Let me just let me just take this clipping plane and delete it. Let's start from scratch. All right. So I'm just in perspective view, so we can see this thing three-dimensionally and really see what's going on, how it's working. But right now I just have my light vessel. I've saved a copy of it just in case I do something that's kind of destructive and by accident maybe even, and I need to go back. I don't want to accidentally delete something or so I sort of make iterative copies of my files. I recommend that you do the same. So if you have your sole or only copy of your light vessel file open, and I recommend just sort of going to File, Save As, making a copy, and then that old one's a backup. All right, just in case. And then I'm in perspective view, right? So if I double click, I'll just shrink this layers box so I can have more screen real estate here. But if I double click, I have four views: top, front, right, and perspective are the defaults. I'm just going to go into perspective view for the moment. And then when I go to that perspective label, I can change a number of things, including the display mode. And I have it set to monochrome right now. So that way I get the best of both worlds. I get a sort of soft shadow render as well as some line work. Okay. And I don't have my sun turned on. Maybe I do have my sun turned on. Oh, I see. I've just turned down the intensity. Interesting. Let's see here. Set to Las Vegas, looks like. And let me just see what's going on here. Oh yeah, there it is. There's the shadow. All right. Yeah, so you can see I have some better shadows on the inside now. I can quite clearly see where I'm getting bright spots, glares, as well as the shadows, the resulting negative shadows being cast along all the surfaces on the inside. So, um, that's sort of my setup, and I just sort of saying that for your benefit, in case you're trying to do something similar now, or if you're following along in the recording later on. Okay. So, one thing that annoys me about Rhino, no matter sometimes, um, no matter what the screen is focused on, the rotation can get sort of like the rotation here is somewhere out in space, right? And so if I want to rotate inside of this thing and have it pivot, the way I can reset that rotation is to simply use this magnifying glass zoom window and maybe just draw a small window where I want that center to be. And now you can see that I can pivot in a much tighter way. That happens from time to time. It's unfortunate that it works that way. And that way I can pivot onto the inside. I can just sort of say, oh, I just want to get inside this thing. Here we go. Not too bad. That's a pretty nice perspective right there. But hey, I'm biased because I actually modeled this. So anyway, um, let's start talking about clipping planes. First, plan and section. So uh, I had, let's see if I still have these, some diagrams that might actually be useful just to demonstrate this. So for those of you who already know what plans and sections are, I apologize. But it is something that we should go over. And alas, I don't have it here on this laptop. Let me just go to my Google Drive here and see what happens. See what's shaking. My drive. Uh, let's see, teaching. And maybe let's try summer of 2025. It almost sounds nostalgic. Like, man, that was so long ago. It's just like a year ago. All right, let's see which one of these images might be. Well, you know what? Plan, section, elevation, and I'll just put in an author's name, Frank Ching, and I'll find a diagram online. I think that sort of speaks volumes about what we mean when we talk about plans and sections. That's an interesting example. What I'm going to do is open that up in a new tab. We'll come back to that in a minute. Plan, section, elevation. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Mainly because I feel like one simple good graphic sort of explains it all, and I had one in mind, and I thought maybe Googling it would actually be quicker to find it than searching through my Google Drive, but apparently not. Oh, come on. Plan section, elevation diagram. uh, Tuesday's the new Monday. Nothing goes right the first time around. Let's see. This is what I get for having a lazy weekend and not really preparing everything in advance. Now I pay for it. Let's see. Da, 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 da. My goodness. I know Kyle. Maybe Kyle has this diagram in whatever this is. Let's go to this web page and see what he has. Kyle Steinfeld. He's a colleague that works at UC Berkeley. All right. Let's see. Ah, here we go. Right. So here we are. Here's elevation versus section, right? So elevation is like a side view, right? Front, back, left, right, east, west, north, south, usually how we start to define these, right? So what you can see here, let me just make sure I have my cursor open, right? What you can see here is a pretty typical building elevation, right? What's interesting about this is not uh, completely ready for construction documentation. If we did that, we would start to put elevation markers and start to tag certain things. But what you can see is that we have a measured drawing, orthogonal drawing of the front view, right? So it's not perspective, it's not axon. So we only see what we see orthogonally, right? Everything that's perpendicular to our line of sight. Everything is measured and to scale. And this one's a nice one because we have some nice textures and details. And then we even have a little bit of shadow being drawn to really make a flat drawing sort of pop three-dimensionally a little bit here, right? So we start to understand what's closer to us, what's further away, that this house elevation, in fact, actually has relief to it. There's a three-dimensionality to it, right? And this is the exact same house, but cut in section, right? And so the conventions are, of course, that we basically hatch or shade or fill in with what we call the French word poché, everything that's being cut through, right, that has mass to it. So you can see walls and roofs and floors and even the ground and the foundations and everything else, the footers, are being cut through and therefore are the darkest part of the drawing. They're shaded, right? Sometimes it's a hatch, sometimes it's just a dark fill or a color, but it's something that we typically do. We also usually, when you can see it, beef up the. Let me just clear the drawing here and zoom in just a smidge here. See if I can. Oh, there we go. Just zoom in just a bit. When we can see it, we usually also darken or make the lines around the cut stuff thicker, right? We give it a darker or thicker line weight, right? Those are the conventions. And then what you see in here, all this stuff with lighter line weights, is all the stuff that we would see beyond the section cut still in elevation, right? So we start to see a fireplace, it looks like, and a hearth. We see a level change here. We see some shelving. We see a door with a window in it, etc. Over here, we see a dormer sticking out, but that's beyond. And what's nice or interesting about this, you can also see where we have doors and windows cut. For instance, this right here is a doorway. And the reason I can tell is because we're cutting right through the doorway. And so, quite literally, the wall stops here at the top of the opening, right? And then we actually see the wall back beyond in elevation, right? Same thing with windows. What's interesting about this window right here is that if I zoom in on it, let's see how well I can draw freehand. Is that here's the wall and here's the basically the top sill, right? The header of the window. And here's the sill of the window and the wall continuing on. And what we typically do, we would show the any mullions or window frame that's being cut in section, and then the glass being cut in section. Sometimes that's a double line even, right? Glass has thickness. It's small. It's not much thickness, but it's thickness nonetheless. We would be, oh, let me just, clearly I'm not drawing very well with my mouse. And then in elevation beyond, we would see the rest of the wall, the sides of the frame and the opening, window opening, right? So that's why this looks the way it does, right? It's cutting through a window. You can see in elevation this the rest of the side of the wall continuing on around the window, and then here you see the glass being cut through, the glazing. Right? So interesting, right? I mean, I think this is again a good good picture is worth at least 1,000 words, if not more. All right, let's see. Is there plans? And there's more elevations. Look at this, right? If you have, like, say, a neighborhood full of houses and you're using detail and line weight to begin to talk about what's closer and then what gets further away. So this is, I think, a good demonstration of line weights and how you start to read the drawing based off of what you make thick, right? What you give visual hierarchy to. All right, let's see here. Let's just go back to this one, right? Same thing. Here's a section. Now, that's interesting is that this is basically the same section, right? The difference being, let's see if I can blow this up a little bigger and get something. There we go. Oops. Ay, ay, ay. All right. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. So at any rate, the only difference here is the same drawing each time. Is that they sort of up here you get what I just described you would expect, right? So we have negative space, that's sky. We have negative space, that's maybe a living room or a bedroom or something tucked underneath the bedroom or a garden, an entrance, or maybe the right of way. If let's say this is a path, a public space over here, a backyard, whatever it is, right? And then everything that's being cut through has that hatch, ground, retaining walls, roofs. We have a skylight here, but meets the ground again, and the ground and the floor are sort of just used interchangeably. Whereas the one down here just flips that. So in this case, what they wanted to do was actually use hatching and rendering and tone to render what the spatial quality and shadows might be like on the inside, And then what they've done is they flipped it. So now suddenly the negative space is everything that's being cut, right? So once you start to understand the rules and conventions, you can actually break them in really unique and interesting ways, but consistent ways, right? To again make a drawing with a different legibility to it, right? In this case, spending a lot of time with the hatching to describe what these volumes, what the atmospherics would be like on the inside, right? So we start to see that light can come through this, and then we see a difference in the density of hatching on the inside, talking about where light and shadow is, right? All right. So all of that is to say, that's what when I say section, that's what we're talking about. It's quite literally a cross section, cut through the building, like cutting through a nut. We reveal one side and then we can look inside. All right. Like cracking through the shell. Let me just close that. And the floor plan is pretty much the same thing, except this plane that we cut through is horizontal. Right. So let me just again try to find plan section elevation diagram. He just put his full name. He has some great drawings that are very clear. Architectural. Oh, here we go. Okay. Maybe it's in here. Jeez. Oh my gosh. I'm not getting any closer here. Okay. Maybe this one will work. This is Villa Savoie by, no, this is just a different villa. This is not Villa Savoie. Sorry, but it looks like a Corbu villa of some sort. Before I blow that up, let me just make sure I'm not missing the obvious graphic I want to see. Oh yeah, here it is. Right. Sorry. All right, at long last, this is why I should prepare better. Bad Josh, bad professor. All right. Um, at some point, maybe all the graphics will load too. Come on now. Where'd it go? Ugh, what a pain in the royal pain in the rump. All right, let's see. Can I just open this image? Does that work? No, it's way too small. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, sorry about this. Let's just use this one. It's not the fanciest or prettiest, but perhaps it's here and ready to be used. There we go. All right. No, I really don't like this because I really want to see this diagram and show how things are lined up. Sorry, I apologize. I'm taking a while to find the graphic I want. However, trust me, it's worth it. I want to make sure everybody has a good foundation in understanding this stuff. Uh, I, let's see. Section, elevation, diagram. That's on Facebook. What? Come on. All right. Now, usually Google image search doesn't let me down, but today it's just, I don't know. I'm almost ready to just go right back to my drive and try to find what I'm looking for. Well, okay. There's no reason to make this go longer. This is just painful to watch. So let me just find one of the ones I saw before. We'll just settle. Here we go. Why not? We'll just use this one. All right. So what I mean by that is, simply cutting through this thing with a plane like that. That's our section. Whereas cutting through this thing with a horizontal plane, that's our plan. And so here you can see a plan. This is a lousy plan. I'm sorry. Gosh, surely we can do better than this. Let's see if there's a better. Damn. All right. Well, yeah, here we go. Why don't we just use this? I'm just not settling for anything today. All right, let's see. Oh boy. And I'm recording this too, so wow, golly. Oh my gosh. How inept can I possibly be on a Tuesday morning? Floor plan, diagram. Let's just look at that. Ming Ching. See what happens. Yeah, we'll just look at this one then. All right, fine. I'll stop laborious process of trying to find just the right thing. Oh, is this like Frank Ching's like fan club or something? What the heck? All right. So this is actually pretty good. Pretty good image. Let's see. Stop. Uh, Spammy website though. My goodness. Here we go. Okay. So if we look at Um, again, thanks for sticking with me, right? So we can see all this the sort of drawing types that we've talked about last week and now this starting this week, right? So we can get an overall three-dimensional understanding in an isometric or axon view, right? It's called a paraline drawing. The edges are parallel, so any of the edges moving in the same line, those remain parallel in our view. It's not exactly how our eyes see it, though. Our eyes see in perspective, right? So for instance, these two edges are parallel in real life. Oops. However, in a perspective view, especially particularly if we're looking at these on the oblique, they all look like they sort of converge out here into some sort of vanishing point. Same thing for these edges over here. They eventually converge on a vanishing point. All right. And now what we're talking about this time is plan elevation section, right? So if we look at this building and we say let's draw the this elevation, then we would basically make a scaled version where we show the shape of the building and then all the details on the inside or on the outside, right? The windows, the doorways, materials, etc. If we cut it in section, we're still looking at it sideways, right, from the front in this case, but it's like an X-ray. We're seeing inside, right? So now we see very clear what this is: ground, wall, parapet, roof, back to wall. And on the inside, we have walls and floors and roofs and with thickness, right? And then on the inside, we have lighter, we have elevations of what's beyond. We can see things like stairways and what's on the walls, cabinets, windows, etc. The plan view, and oftentimes we do try to line these up when we can, right? Notice how they're all drawn to the same scale and aligned so that you understand that this wall is the same thing as this edge. It's the same thing as this wall being cut in section versus plan. We see this doorway, right? And we see how it works in plan. Where we see part of the stairway and the elevations on the inside, we see those in plan. Where we see windows and elevation, we see those in plan, right? Again, if I blow this up a little bigger, where we have a wall, it's really hard to draw an arc with my mouse freehand, but nevertheless, I'll just try to do it anyway. So let's say this is our wall and wall wrapping around this sort of landing of a stair. And then the wall continues on this way, and then we have a window, right? So we show the glass, then we show the mullions, and then another window, another glass, right? So again, just like with section, we typically beef up the line work around the stuff that's actually being cut, and oftentimes we'll even add some sort of hatch or poche, some fill, right? So that we start to really understand what's solid and then what's the negative space inside or in between all the various solids, right? We start to understand inside-outside relationships, spatial flow, and continuity, or how something a large space or a large building is subdivided into rooms and corridors, etc. Right? So, um, hopefully this isn't too foreign to you, right? Like we oftentimes refer to the drawings of a building as plans, but floor plan has a very specific meaning, and the building section has a very specific meaning, and building elevations have very specific meanings, right? So that's the difference. And oftentimes we back in the good old days before we had virtual models, we would design things in plan and section, and we would line these things up. So we did make a move and plan. We would then project down with our parallel bars or in AutoCAD, and then start to draw the section and make sure everything aligns, right? And so this relationship between them, how they sort of align and stack up, is important, right? Uh, as another example, right? Sometimes people even do this. Let's say I'm going to draw the elevation, this side of the elevation, right? The elevation if this is the south elevation, then this would be the east elevation, right? And so sometimes people would even, again, projecting it outwards, let's say these are construction lines, start to then draw it sideways, just to sort of, again, reveal that. Let's say this is the ground, this is the stairway, this is the other build part of the building, and then show this, right? So, this relationship, right, is also showing it sort of from this direction, right? That's the east elevation. And look what happens, right? It's like there's a hinge here. Here's the front elevation, here's the side elevation, and they line up. The ground stays the same, the scale is the same, etc., right? So we can start to see a relationship between the drawings and start to understand the building, even if all we have are two-dimensional drawings of a three-dimensional object, right? So let's talk now just the basic mechanics of those drawings. And again, we'll get lots of practice in the sort of more detail and granular sort of rules and for how to represent things in those orthographic drawings. But let's start with just what tools we have at our disposal in Rhino to start off with to start cutting sections and plans. All right, so the one I'm going to focus on this week with you guys is called clipping planes. Right, so I'm just going to go to all four views here. I think this one's in wireframe, the top and front and right. They're ortho views, right? So, by the way, if I wanted elevation, let's say I wanted the right elevation, I could just go here and say, let's do monochrome. Ah, and there's the elevation, right? Or if I go to front, I can, you know, set that to monochrome and I get the front elevation, right? In this case, it looks like this would be the south elevation. This would be the east elevation, kind of a blank thing. If I go to the left, let's turn this from right to left, right? Now I get the west elevation with that little vertical slot window. Um, right. So anyway, you get the idea, I hope. That's how you can start to think in terms of elevation. I'm just going to turn these back to wireframe. I don't necessarily need to render them in real time here. But I am going to keep my perspective rendered. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say clipping plane. Just type that in, that command. It'll start to pick up. Do you want to make a clipping plane? I sure do. Look at that, clipping plane. Now, it's going to say first corner of rectangle. And so now with all four views, I'm going to think about, well, if I'm going to click and draw a plane, a rectangle, which orientation do I want this section cut or this plane to be in? So if I wanted to cut through the short dimension of this building, then I go to the front view and I'd say click, click. Now I have a plane in the right orientation. In fact, now I have it selected in my perspective view and just using the gumball, I'm moving it around. All right. Now, what's interesting, I can go to the top view and see the same thing, and I can move it, be very precise. Now, look what's happening. It's really only cutting this section in my front view, right? And it's not doing it in my perspective view or my left view or whatever. So let's change that. I'm going to select the clipping plane itself, right? And you can see the representation of this is like a plane, a box, and then it actually has a couple of sort of crosshairs that extend out. And when you see it in a three-dimensional view or in the perpendicular view, it has the arrows sort of showing where the clipping plane is pointed at, right? In other words, what's in front of the clipping plane that you see and what's behind the clipping plane that disappears, right? So as I start to move this through, you can see that the section starts to change because I'm cutting through different places in the building, right? But let's select that clipping plane and let's go to its properties, right? Anytime I have an object and I want to change its properties, I select that object and then I go to the color wheel, right? Layers, color wheel, sun, named views, right? Just a few of the things that we've used over here on the right-hand side. I'm going to the color wheel and giving me the properties. There's the overall properties, the clipping plane, but then I can look at the specific clipping plane properties, right? You can see that I have several options here. And so one of the things that it's going to ask me is, what views do you want the clipping plane to actually show and clip? Right now, I only have front selected. And so let's also turn on perspective. Maybe we could even turn on left, right? Now we can see that in real time, it's clipping things, right, as we go. Sometimes it helps us see things a little better. If we wanted to keep the clipping plane but turn it off temporarily, we could just say, don't show it in any of our views, right? We have the clipping plane. We can put it on its own layer, turn it on or off. But right now it's not clipping any of the views until we go back, select it, go to its clipping plane properties, turn it back on. All right. Okay. Let's say it's going the wrong direction. Let's say we wanted the arrows going the opposite direction. We wanted to look the other direction. We could say flip direction. And now suddenly the front and back, or the what's in front of and what's behind the clipping plane flips. It changes. Okay. Now we can look at the building this way. That's a nice looking building, isn't it? Oh, sorry. I digress. Anyway, so uh, let's see here. Now, there's a couple of other things, and if you're following at home, you might not see the view that I'm seeing, and that's what I've done is that I've basically given it some properties, some display properties in the clipping plane, what the things that are being cut, what they should look like at that cut, right? So, for instance, I've added a 45-degree hatch in the places that are like mass that are being cut through the section with the section plane. Everything else beyond is you can see, but it's just rendered just as normal. And then I've also told it just to beef up the line weight around the clipping plane, the cut stuff, right? And you can see that it's darker around the stuff being cut versus the stuff in the background that has a slimmer and lighter line weight. Okay. Again, the sort of visual hierarchy here. So how we do that is not as straightforward as I think it should be, but I'll show you where that's located. And again, that's why I'm recording this. So if you forget, let's say you're doing this again over the weekend, that you can go back and sort of see where this is. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the layers, right? I'm over here on the right hand side. I was just in the properties, the color wheel, and I'm going to go to the layers, and I'm going to look at the layer of all of my what I call layer '09 final version, and that's basically all of the sort of solids and surfaces in my model here that have been composed as a light vessel, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this layer box and make it bigger. And what you can see is that maybe hidden on yours, but you can start to reveal all the different things we can do by layer, right? So we can name the layer. We can say whether it's on or off, whether we want to lock it, if we want to assign material to it, what color it shows up to as when we have in shaded mode. I'm just going to keep going here. If it's a set of lines, what kind of line type to use, what kind of line weight to use. But right here at the towards the end, we have something called section style. And what I'm doing is you can see that mine's set to custom. Most of these by default are set to none. And so what I did is I clicked on this and I began to set what do I want these things to look like when they're cut in section, right? So in other words, these surfaces, no matter how many times I cut it with a clipping plane, the stuff that's being cut, the section style is going to have, I'm going to fill things in this case with a hatch. I just picked a certain one. I'll just change it to solid really quickly and hit OK. You can see it should turn to solid, right? And so I can specify solid or a hatch, some sort of pattern. I can rotate it. I can change the scale of the pattern. I can change the color, right? I could say by object or by layer, or I can just give it as a very specific color. In this case, I just said I want it to be black. And then same with the boundary, right? So I have something called line type, right? I'm just going to say by layer and let it stay as continuous. The line color, in this case, I set it to black. And then the width scale, I can also bump that up if I wanted to, make the line weight, the line width thicker or thinner. And then whether or not I want to section open objects versus closed objects, I have that toggled on. I think that was by default. Let me just set this back to hatch. I'll turn that to 45, hit OK. Let's just zoom in. Let's see what happens when I start to adjust some of these parameters, right? So I could change the pattern rotation back to 0. I could change the pattern scale to 0.5. Right now I have something that's more dense and it's not rotated 45 degrees, it's rotated 0 degrees. All right. I like that 45-degree hatch though. Not too shabby. But I could change the scale of the hatch by simply going to pattern scale, and one would be 100%, half would be 0.5. If I wanted bigger, evenly spaced, I just up that number as you can imagine. Let's look at the line type and line width scale. So I can say don't show the boundary lines, and then suddenly they disappear. It's kind of a weird look, isn't it? So I'm going to go ahead and go back and turn that back on. But now I can change the width scale. Let's double it to 6, right? You can see that it's even thicker now. right? So now it really sort of pops out where this thing is actually cut through. That hatch, changing the density, started to make it much darker when we get further away, right? So anyway, that's how we can begin to quickly cut some sections and some plans. Let me show you what this looks like when we cut a plan through things, right? So let me just, I'll just delete this clipping plane. Nope, no more clipping plane. All right, I'll go back to my four views, and in top view now, I'm going to type in clipping plane in my my thing up here. What do you call it? I can't think of simple words today. Yikes. All right. So anyway, up here I typed in clipping plane in the command line. There we go. And now in top view I can make a horizontal XY plane, right? Oh, look at that. So good. And I can move this up or down, and you can see that in top view. Aha. Look at that. I start to have a plan. And let's take a quick look, right? This is an orthographic plan. Unfortunately, I'm seeing this plane. I'm just going to move this over here. The plane is infinite. It just continues to extend. But at the same time, I really, really, really don't want to see it in the way. And I'm going to change this to monochrome. Ah, there we are. And I have a problem of some sort. It's not filling these walls in with a hatch. It's filling this wall in with a hatch, but not these. It's kind of odd. So I wonder what's going on here. They must not be closed. Yeah, that must be the thing, right? So when I run into that problem, what I'll probably just do is say none and hit OK. And then maybe I can fix that in Illustrator or Photoshop later on when I bring a drawing like this out of Rhino and then bring it into a place where I can compose it, make it a PDF, etc. Then I could probably use some of the tools in Illustrator or Photoshop to do that for me. I can fill those in any way I want. So I'll show you that process here in a minute or two. Okay. Um, but the interesting thing is what I want you guys to do between now and tomorrow's class is try this out. Try cutting some plans, try cutting some sections, and show me what you come up with. And we can go over some more details tomorrow. Um, but what I'll do is I'll give you guys some silhouette packs of some people and some trees, maybe some other entourage, and we can start to actually place them in the section drawings, start to see what kind of scale of the spaces you have inside. So anyway, this is a plan, right? And so again, if I select this clipping plane, I go to the color wheel and look at its properties, clipping plane properties. I can also cut it in perspective. And this is what I mean, right? Like we can start to understand what exactly we have here when I cut through these things. And I'm just going to, it drives me crazy. I'm just going to go back here and look at that section style. I'm going to turn that hatch back on. Let's see what happens when I do that. Okay, so it's showing the hatch in this view, but not in the top view. I don't know why. That's so odd. Yeah, look at that. So that's like a plan perspective, if you will, right? And what this will allow us to do is begin to think about what we so far have been abstracted. We started with this set of planar components, and the idea was to sort of arrange things in a nice, interesting spatial way, and then to enclose it and begin to sort of clean things up and start to edit. But now, if we start to think about this as a piece of architecture, we can start to apply the conventions of the drawings to them. So, for instance, let me go to one of the elevation views here, and I'm going to move this so that it's pretty close to the ground, right? Pretty close to where x equals or z equals 0. And let me just move this up 4 feet. Right? Typically, when we cut a floor plan and we think about the plane that's slicing through the building where we're cutting that plan, it's usually 4 feet above the either grade or finish floor level, right? And so that's a typical convention that we use for floor plans, right? So it's a first floor plan. We would look at the first floor elevation and we'd go 4 feet above, and that's where we would cut the plan with this plane. For a second floor elevation, we would go up to the second floor and then 4 feet above it, that's where the plan would be cut. And that allows us to see furniture, plumbing, fixtures, and things like that in elevation beyond. And typically we'll mark those and actually draw those in as we start to develop the project. Okay. So if you see, like, let's say a floor plan of a living room, oftentimes in much thinner line weight, maybe even a lighter color like a gray, you'll see things like the hatch of the floor finish. Let's say it's tile or something, or couch, sofa, potted plant, television, tables, coffee tables, etc. Right? Same with the kitchen. You often see um, sinks and cabinets and fixtures like refrigerator and range, or and sometimes even dashed in to show what would be above cabinets, like overhang cabinets. So anyway, that's what we would do. So one of the things I'm going to actually encourage you to do is to start cutting your vessel in section to start to understand where your horizontal planes are. And then we can start to think about, we can put some scale figures, some silhouettes inside, and try to better understand what kind of scale of the spaces you have inside, and what do we need to stretch something, right? If we have a space that's really cool, but it's only 4 feet tall, we need to rethink that, right? Because a lot of people would not be able to access that space if it's only 3 or 4 foot of clearance. And certainly it would be a real bummer for anybody that's maybe sight impaired and using a walking stick and suddenly they smack their head into or run right into a floor that's not that's shorter than 6 feet or 7 feet. So we can start to again use these drawings to see what we have on the inside and begin to make more informed editing decisions on where we have walls and floors. We can start to slide things, delete or add as necessary, but with a new set of tools in our toolkit. All right. So there's my first floor. But let me look at this, right? So I have a looks like I have a second floor right here, right? This it's hard, a little hard to see because it's magenta against the red, right? But what I might do is I might bring this clipping plane up right up to about that plane and then tell it to go 4 feet up higher, right? Now suddenly I have a second floor, right? In other words, if this white, let me just bring up my cursor. If this is my second floor and it's like a sort of a mezzanine overlooking a much larger multi-story space down below and up above, then the plan cuts 4 feet above this, right? And yeah, so anyway, let me turn this off here. And so that's where we get something like this, right? And so again, in plan, we see the walls that are being cut, and then we also see, I didn't put a piece of glass here, so we don't see the glass being cut, but typically it would be if it's whether it's a plane or just a really thin solid, like a pane of glass would be, or a double pane, two solids with a little bit of a gap in between. We do see the sill below in elevation, right? But it's much lighter, right? And so the visual emphasis in plans and sections to start off with is what's being cut through. And in doing so, right, we see these walls and things like that. We can start to understand where we have open space and we can start to understand the volumes that we have on the inside. So it's a volume void relationship that we expose when we cut a building in section and plan. All right. So what I would like everybody to do is to try this out between today and tomorrow. And I'm going to fill the rest of our time by showing you how then you can bring some of these out as drawings, bring them to Illustrator. I will share some silhouette packs with you guys between today and tomorrow, so that later on, like tomorrow, starting tomorrow, you can go through the whole workflow and then try to put some scaled figures and scale trees in. So anyway, let me just go through this really quickly. Let's see. I'm going to cut a section, right? So we'll go through this process again. I'm going to go to the front view and I'm going to say clipping plane. And I'm going to draw my rectangle this direction. And I'm going to, oops, make sure I have that clipping plane selected and move it around. I have the clipping plane selected, go to its properties, right? Remember, we have the regular properties, but when we have special objects like a clipping plane, we also have clipping plane properties, right? So I'm going to go ahead and toggle this on for perspective as well. What's nice about perspective is we have what we commonly refer to as a section perspective, right? So now I can look inside Oh, and I have a nice one point perspective, things projecting out into space. And so I can see what's being cut through, but I can also see the qualities and shadows on the inside. Um, anyway, kind of an interesting thing here. All right, so this clipping plane is showing up annoyingly. I don't actually want to see the clipping plane. Like I don't want there to be a red line and a red box in the middle of my drawing. That just looks stupid and tacky. Um, right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to call this clipping plane layer, clipping plane or something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and then with the clipping plane selected, I'm going to go to its properties and this time make sure I have the color wheel on. It's going to tell me what layer it's already in. It's already in layer 09. And I want to put it on its own clipping plane layer that I just made. And now when I go back to the layers, I can turn that layer off from being seen. Okay. Now the clipping plane is still there. It's still working. As you can see, I have a section perspective. However, what's nice about this is that the clipping plane is no longer visible on my view. So in the perspective view, I can do that. In my front view, let me look at this really quickly. Yes, look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and this is an orthographic section, right? I'm going to go ahead and turn it on to monochrome, right? And yeah, look at that. One thing I'm noticing is I'm getting kind of a weird moire effect from all the hatching. So I'm going to change, I'm going to go back to the custom for layer 9. I'm going to change that pattern, maybe just a little too dense. And so I'm getting that aliasing. Now I have a nice crisp 45 by simply turning the hatching back to scale of 1 or 100% instead of making it twice as dense. Okay. I like that. That's not too shabby. And from here, I will think about how to export this out. All right. Now, one thing that really bugs me are these solid lines where we start to see that we have different masses and they sort of intersect each other. So we get this edge, and they look like they sort of intersect awkwardly. Um, so actually, let me show you this. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and turn off the hatch. I'll say none for the time being. I'm going to set this to 5, just make it a little more subtle, the line weight there. All right. And just like before, I'm going to go ahead and go view. And this isn't going to be a scaled section necessarily. I'm going to say capture to file, just like we did with our axons and our perspectives. And I'm just going to say, yeah, let's just say scale of 2 and hit OK. And I'm just going to bring out a PNG file. And well, golly, I've just been saving them here in my teaching folder, so I guess I'll just follow suit. I'm going to say section 01 and hit it, enter, and let it save that. I'll do the same thing here for the perspective view. I'll show you that, that you can do this in several different ways, but I'll show you what this looks like. Again, I'll just go view, capture to file, and do the exact same thing. Now I see the section perspective, okay. And I'll just say section perspective. Oh, what? And hit save. Same section. It's cut in the exact same place. As one is orthographic, and the other one has the perspective projection turned on, so that we sort of see everything, all the edges running parallel with our line of sight. Now we see them, and they start to look like they converge in a point somewhere here in the center, right? Some sort of vanishing point over here, over in this location. All right. And that's all to say that now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up Adobe Illustrator. Let's see here. There's Illustrator. You like, why do I have to do this every time? Yeah, sure. I'm like, no, I don't want Illustrator to be open up files. Come on. I accidentally installed the entire Creative Cloud. Come on, like Jesus. All right. So anyway, let's see. New file. Let's do a new file. I'm just going to stick with 8.5 by 11. Why not? This is kind of a taller drawing, right? This is a tall dude, so I'm gonna make that portrait. Let's, oh, I just said close instead of create. All right, sorry, try this again. 8.5 by 11, tall portrait, create. All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say file in place. I'm gonna go ahead and find that image file that I just created. There's section 01. Oh, yes, look at that. I'm gonna place this in. It's obviously ridiculously large compared to the 8.5 by 11. I'm gonna go ahead and change this. Let's see. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drag and drop that, or sorry, click and drag. Command 0, Control 0 to fit the screen again. I'm going to go ahead and move this around. All right. Now I don't have a ground plane. That's annoying, right? So I might have to draw that in Illustrator. And I might need to fill some of this stuff in, right? For instance, I think it'd be a lot easier to see this stuff if I could see the what do you call it? The hatch, the poche, right? Start to understand what's being cut through and what's not. I'm gonna right click here. Let's see if what options it gives me. If it says something like sometimes it used to give you the option of just editing the original asset in Photoshop. Okay, it's not. All right, that's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Photoshop. Since this is a PNG file, it's basically a set of pixels, just basically a big grid of pixels in a field. And some are set to white, some are set to gray, some are set to black. It just happens to look like some of them are lines and crisp corners and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, where's teaching? There we are. Drag and drop this dude over. There's our section. Just drag that into Photoshop. All right. Photoshop, very similar to Illustrator in certain key ways. If I go to Window, Workspace, Essentials Default, um, then I have a set of toolbars over here on the left. I'll have some boxes over here on the right. I have some pull downs here. If there's some sort of window that you don't see over here on the right that you need, you can go to the Windows pull down. You can toggle things on or off. So, for instance, if you're writing text in Photoshop for some reason, you can always toggle on the paragraph formatting. Then you can start to say, "Oh, I want it to be center justified rather than left justified," or whatever. Anyway, so a couple of things I'm going to do over here on the toolbar is what I'm going to be mainly. And I'm going to look at this. I'm going to say right now my default color is set to some sort of light gray, and my background color is set to black. What I can do is I can click here and set them to back to the defaults. Black foreground color, white background color. Then I can flip those using the sort of arrow key here. Now suddenly the active color is white. And now the background color is black. So I can toggle them back and forth like that if I have two different colors I want to use. But I'm going to use black. I'm going to use the paint bucket tool, and I'm just going to simply try to let it color inside the lines for me. Now I can simply make a very simple poche, just a dark fill, right? Inside the places that are actually being cut. Let's do that with the section perspective as well. I'll just open to documents to teaching, section perspectives right here. I can do the exact same thing here. I can use the paint bucket tool and just click, 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 click. Ah, now I have a nice figure ground, right? Either way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save, save that, save. I can close those now in Photoshop. And lo and behold, Illustrator says, oh, some files are missing. Would you like to update them? Yes. And now it's going to update the changes here because rather than importing and inserting the image directly into Illustrator, what I did is I told it to place the image and it remembers the link back to the original image asset. When I change the original image asset, you'll see the images or the changes update here in Illustrator, right? I like that section perspective, but let's use this. One other thing I'm going to do in Illustrator right now, in typically in section drawings, we really emphasize the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply draw a line. But you know what? I'm actually doing this the hard way. Rather than drawing a line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box. I'm going to basically make a fill for the ground here, right? I'm going to make a box, and right now, mine was set to basically transparent or no fill, and then a black outline. And what I want to do is I want to change that. I don't necessarily want an outline, but I do want a black fill. And now suddenly I have a section drawing that reads as a building set on ground, and the ground, the earth is thick, right? So I'm emphasizing that there is ground here that it's resting on, and that's pochade as well in the same way. All right. Now, I'm not going to give you the silhouette packs right now. I'll do that sometime overnight so that they're ready for you tomorrow. But let me see if I have. Sorry, let's see. Do I have a silhouette pack downloaded? You'd think I would. Ay, ay, ay. I thought I was ready for today. Apparently, between diagrams of plans and sections and having silhouette packs, I'm not. Anyway, what I'll show you is let's see. Actually, I might see some Entourage. Here we go. Of course I do. All right. So what I'll show you is some of these packs that I'll give you guys for tomorrow. But I have like a bunch of silhouette packs that I'm just happy to share with you guys. But you can see that they're basically just silhouettes of humans occupying space. Sometimes they're doing pretty, activities like walking or standing or having a conversation with another. There's a few of these I'll give you guys. There's groups of people. There's folks reclining or whatever this is, playing Mortal Kombat role play, like they're LARPing outside or something. A bunch of weirdos stretching, doing yoga in the park or something, moving around, using a cane, taking their children on a walk, whatever it is. Looking at what this looks like a paper map or something. Does anybody have a paper map anymore? Anyway, so what I'll show you guys is where we'll be going with this, and of course I'll also give you, I think, some tree silhouettes, so some plant silhouettes to start off with, some trees in elevation and section, as well as some in plan. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow, but I'll just show you where we're going with this. Let's see, people silhouette. Let's try which one looks the best. Groups of people look pretty good. Yeah, we'll try that. So I'll just open this up. It's an Illustrator file already. You can see that I have both the figure and I have them sort of inverted as well, in case we want like white silhouettes against a dark background. But right now, what I'm just going to do is just do this. Let's have a few people. There we go. Let's try this one. Just to say, select them, Command C, copy, Command V to paste. I'm just going to place them in here. Now, what's really important is to think about the scale, right? These aren't to scale. For instance, I know for a fact, because I made the rules, that this distance right here is 20 feet, right? And I know that this distance here is twice that, 40 feet. Yeah. And so if I think about this just for a moment, let's just draw this again, 20 feet, 20-foot line. Yes, look at that. And I look at how long it is. It happens to be in width, it's 4.712 inches. I'm just going to say 4.7 just to make a nice round right here. It just happens to be where I scaled this thing, right? And I just want to make sure I can still see this. I'm going to go ahead and give the outline, the line weight black. There we go. There's my line. Now I can simply start to think, okay, so if this is 20 feet, it's 4.7 inches. 2.35 would be 10 feet. And then half of that, whatever 2.35 is, half. Let's see. I can't do simple math in my head anymore because I have these damn calculators. Let's see. What is this? What did I say? 2.35. 2.35 divided by 2 is 1.175. I should have known that. So 1.175, that's 5 feet, right? And I'm just going to move this up so it's vertical. When I just get close to it, you see how my cursor changes? And I can hold down the shift and I can go in 45-degree increments to rotate it till I have it right where I want to be. So that's 5 feet of height. So now if I look at these maybe average height people, some are just a little over 5 feet, some are a little under 5 feet. Now I have something that's to scale and I can start to show some people inside. They're really kind of dark, so maybe I just lighten them up a bit, right? I can do that several ways. I can change their fill color to like a lighter gray, right? Or I can even change their opacity just a bit up here at the top. So now I can see through them just a little bit. Regardless, there they are, right? I can start to then see, how tall of a space I have, for instance, here, right? So this is a pretty tall space. I mean, it's It's up there, right? So let's say this is about 10 feet. This is like, this is a pretty tall space. Nice space. And I could, of course, add some more folks here if I wanted to, and it's hard to draw people here, but oh, good God. All right. Please forget I ever did that in front of you. Yikes. But now we start to see that we need things like, half walls and railings and things like that. But we can start to understand, like the sort of spatial interlock here. So I have a tall space up here that's overlooking a super tall space over here, and then there's a little alcove over here. It's not that little, it's pretty tall still. But then I still have this sort of opening here. It's kind of interesting, right? So when I'm in section, I start to look, what's happening in here? Do I maybe add an opening here, right? For instance, if I'm framing something back here and I think about where people are standing looking, right? Do I want to show some sky or do I put a piece of art there or what, right? So again, you can start to get into the next level of decision making when you start to cut these things open in section and plan. And I'm showing you a lot in a short amount of time, but that's because I want you guys to try, fail, come to class tomorrow with questions, and we can basically get everybody on their way to tomorrow will be a work session. Um, and for those of you who can come, that session will be in person. For those who can't, just log into Zoom like you normally would, and I'll have Zoom open as well. So it'll be sort of multimodal on Wednesdays, um, right? So we'll try meeting in person as much as we can on Wednesdays. When some of you are already here for the library or for the history class anyway. Again, if you can't make it in person on Wednesdays, that's fine. Just log back in through Zoom like you normally would. I'll have Zoom open as well. Okay. But that's what I want you to do is try cutting some sections and a couple of plans, right? In your light vessel. And this will be the sort of first stab at taking a look at how we do that in Rhino, and then can further format things in Illustrator, right? For instance, here I'll just bring up the tree silhouettes. Let's see what we have here. I'll just take this one, copy, and then paste. Now we want to, of course, make it a scale that seems appropriate. Of course, we have ground that it sits on, right? I'll just move everything over so I have a little bit of space here for the tree. Happy little tree. It's like Bob Ross. Just give it a friend over somewhere back here. Let's see, do we have any cypress or actually maybe something more appropriate for the desert? I don't know. I'll just go ahead and put this little guy in. Paste. Put this dude over here. Scale it up to a more appropriate scale. Right over there. Make sure it's not growing into the building. That'd be bad. And maybe these are too dark. Maybe then I bring these down just a bit in color as well. Maybe have a few people on the outside. Copy, paste. I'm going to move them over closer to the other groups of people so I can scale them the way they need to be. So that they all look like sort of appropriate size. There we go. Now I'll have them down here. You can see I have a problem with, they had a slight perspective, like the feet that are closer to me are lower, and they're sort of overlapping, right? So in this case, just like I made this box over here, I'm going to go ahead and make another box. And I'm just going to make sure that that box hides those overlapping feet there. Right, so I can clean some things up here. Um, Now I have these people, they're darker than these people. I want them to be consistent. What's nice about that is this is a fun thing in Illustrator. If I look at my toolbars over here, there's an eyedropper tool, and I can say, bloop, let's sample the properties of these guys, and let's apply them over here. Oh, sorry. Let's select these guys. Now let's eyedropper these, and it'll apply them over here. Fun little thing to do. just going to adjust this up just a smidge. There we go. Yeah. And I'm just going to tell it to arrange and bring this box to the front. There we go. Yeah, so there we are. We're well on our way to creating a very, very simple, basic section. And again, this is an Illustrator. What I've noticed is that I needed more space here. So I'm going to edit my artboard, and I'm going to go ahead and stretch this document out a little further. Maybe make it closer to 11 by 17. In which case I can then stretch this guy to the very end, this to the very end, and anyway, I can just keep going. Um, Now I'm going to go to my document setup, edit artboards. Let's make another one. I'll do the section perspective as well. There we are. I'm not sure. What do we have there? Let's see. Edit artboards. Select this guy. Why is it not? Ay, ay, ay. It's not giving me arrange, workspace, essentials, classic. Oh, it's probably because this thing is, yeah, here we go. 17. Just make this 17 wide. 11 by 17. True 11 by 17. I like that. All right. Again, I'll go file place. Let's take a look at this section perspective. Where did that go? It's somewhere in here. Oh, it's right here. Right here in front of me, of course. Always the last place I look. Why is it not letting me place file? File place. Dun-dun-dun-dun. There we go. Must have hit the wrong button before. Needs to be shrank down a bit, doesn't it? Yep. Placing scale figures and entourage and perspective is different than in an ortho drawing, like an orthographic section. And I'll show you how and why in a minute. But first of all, we're not necessarily at any eye level here. And so we'll need to do some, figure out the scale again, right? And so, for instance, again, I said this was like 20 feet, right? And let's see, it's about five, let's just call that 5 inches. There we go. So 2.5, 1.25. So 1.25 would be 5 feet, right? Basically a quarter of that. And let's go ahead and give that stroke color. Let's make it black. Over to my color guide over here. All right. And now I'm just going to, add some more scale figures here. Let's see. Groups of people. Da, 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 da. It seems like there's a pretty extreme amount of people here. Let's try these. Let's go with two. Or, yeah, this one looks good. Actually look like they're having a conversation maybe. All right. Paste. I'm going to bring them over here. Now, one thing I'm going to emphasize is that perspectives aren't necessarily, they're not a scale drawing, right? And so what I did is I measured, let me just bring up my cursor here. I measured from here to here, right? But that same width is only from here to here as we get further and further away, right? In perspective, we have foreshortening. Things that get further away, they actually look smaller, right? And so it's really important that as we start to place scale figures here at the very foreground, right? That then we draw the vanishing points and then we draw the line so that we can actually understand where other people are out in space. All right. So it's kind of a weird thing to think about. But for instance, these people are only going to be the size that they should be. Let me just demonstrate this. Let's say somewhere like in that range. If they are right up here in the foreground, right up where the section's being cut. All right, so let's take a moment just to think about this for a second. Um, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my annotate tools here, draw some lines. There's a line. There's a line. So I'm slowly starting to, I think, figure out that the vanishing point is somewhere in this neighborhood, right? Let's just make a circle here, right? Approximating where that vanishing point would be. There we go. Right. So what's interesting about this is that if we drew some people, let's see, let me get my freehand tool, somewhere back in here, right? What we need to do is if they're the same, if they're approximately the same height, we would need to project the perspective back to there, right? So suddenly someone back way back here would actually be, would look shorter, right? And I think that's really important to consider. I'm going to turn this off for a moment. Let's go get another set of silhouettes here to put in here. And let's see. Let's try someone else that is standing upright. Let's try like these folks right here. Hit can copy and then paste. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try to line them up with that perspective line. They're back there, and their feet are going to be hidden a little bit, right? And so I'm going to have to mask that. But what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and get rid of the red chicken scratch now. There we go. Okay. And now what I need to do is basically just mask this part of the silhouette so that it looks like, they're actually back behind there. Does that make sense? They're occluded. Their feet are occluded because we're not actually seeing the floor. Their feet are resting on the floor, and so we approximate where those feet positions would be. Now we just need to basically mask these things away so that they're occluded appropriately. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these guys. I'm going to just turn their opacity down a bit so I can see what's behind them. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a new line or a new shape. I'm going to use what I call the ink pen, this pen. And I'm just going to carefully click and then let off, click, click. And I'm going to draw the shape around the parts that I actually still want to remain. And then really important, instead of using the typical cursor tool over on the left, I'm going to use the filled one on the right. And that allows me to select these secondary parts, pieces, like the points of the shape, rather than the entire shape. Just make sure that's in the exact position. Now I'm going to select this shape in these silhouettes, and I'm going to say Object, and I'm going to say Clipping Mask, Make. All right. And now I've made a clipping mask just like before, I showed last week, where I only see the silhouettes inside the shape I drew, and they're occluded in the parts where the shape isn't, right? So the mask is like a window. Everything outside the window gets masked away, right? Like masking tape. I'm going to up their opacity back, double click inside, change their opacity from 75 to 100, then go back, just sort of like going drilling back into that group. And now we have something that looks accurate from a perspective standpoint. Okay. I would do the exact same thing down here, where I would, basically try to figure out where that 5, 6 foot height is, right? Then draw back to the vanishing point, and now all the heads or eyeballs line up with that line, right? Or that plane that sort of goes back to the vanishing point. Okay. So try your best and try this out. Kind of an interesting thing. And like I said, I don't expect everybody to get it right away. That's why we sort of meet back to back to back in 3 days in a row, because I don't want you to spend Monday through Wednesday struggling. I want you to struggle overnight. Then on Wednesday, we start to work through the problems. You have any more struggles between Wednesday and Thursday? On Thursday, we can make sure you're all set for the long weekend to finish the assignments, and with and less and hopefully a much less frustrating way. All right. So overnight, I want you to try to cut both a plan and a section try to bring it into Illustrator. Try to follow the whole workflow. If you need to watch the video recording, you can. Again, as soon as Zoom processes the video, I'll upload it to YouTube and then embed it into Canvas for you guys to use, reference. But this is the name of the game for this week in the morning class. We're gonna take one of these light vessels that you worked on, the daylight vessel that you've been working on, and begin to go through the motions of looking on the inside in section and plan. All right. You know what problem I have here is that I don't have a ground again. That's annoying. That's really frustrating, right? Again, I could say that maybe the ground is flat for all practical purposes and do that. Um, and yeah, but at the same time, I would say, let's see here, that I would still need to sort of place things inside. The other interesting thing about this, and I'll sort of point this out here I'll just make a copy of these guys and place them right down here. Everything is casting a shadow now except for the humans. That's annoying, isn't it? So there are ways of getting around that. What I'll do is I'll just show you one. I can copy and paste these guys. Um, and one of the things I could probably do is think about now. Um, let's move these guys over here and think about now like how I can convert these into shadows. One of the things I might do is let's go to object, path or shape. Let's see what kinds of things I can do here. Like there's a perspective tool. I hate it though. It's so counterintuitive. Envelope, distort, warp, mesh. I might want to do that. Let's see here. Let's see what tools do I have up here that I can use. Oh, you know what? What if I, no, what if I do this? Okay, no. I need to actually do some sort of warp or, okay, so let's go to, sorry, I'm just thinking about this out loud, but it's sometimes you just have to shape, convert to shape, pattern, intertwine, repeat. Where did I find that warp? Intertwine, repeat, pattern, smooth, add anchor points, devise, reverse path, objects on path, blend. Oh, make with warp, envelope distort. Okay, I think that's what I will do. Make with warp. Let's try that. Oh dear. Okay, this is going to be a pain. You have to get just everything just right, I guess. So I'm gonna hit cancel. That's not what I want to do. I want to be able to sort of freehand and take each of these and sort of warp it. And I'm trying to remember where that is. Mesh. Let's see. It's easier to do in Photoshop because you can just transform it with I think warp or shear. Let's see. Where's warp or shear here? Envelope options, release, make top with object. Envelope options. That's not it. Let's see. Convert to shape. What does that do? Edit path. Oh, maybe I'll look at this over here. Edit path. Let's see. No, it's not. That's not what I want. Damn. Well, I'll investigate that between now and tomorrow for how the easiest way of doing this in Illustrator. But let me just show you what that looks like in Photoshop. Later on, when we start to process some of these things in Photoshop, we can certainly do it there. Let's put a section perspective here, and let's just add these as people. Same thing. Oops. Yeesh. All right, come on. Place them where I want them. All right, let's just say done. Yikes, I forgot to do that. Okay. I'm just going to make a copy of this layer just so you can see where this might go later. Let's say duplicate layer. So it's the exact same layer. It's now just underneath, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say image or edit, sorry, transform. And yeah, let's do, is it distort or warp? I can never remember. I'll do warp. Nope, it's not. It's the other one. Let's see, edit, transform, distort. There we go. Now what I can do is I can actually modify their perspective, get these things actually line up with the original assets a little better, start to mimic and figure out what that original angle was for the sun, shadows angles. Make sure that they're underneath in layer, turn down the opacity a bit, right? And then of course, if I wanted to fuzz them up a little bit, I could go to filter and blur and just give it a little bit of a blur. All right, so that's how you can begin to start casting shadows, and that's not the best shadow job, but you get the idea. I'm not so worried about that right now. What I'd like for you guys to do, try using those clipping planes, try making a couple of sections and plans. Try, right? Fail early, fail often. That's the mantra here, right? Sometimes we're going to hit road bumps. What I want to do is hit those speed bumps sooner, so that we can get you over those. All right, and well on your way to using these tools as effectively as you can. All right. Um, if you get further, then go ahead and open up Illustrator, make some 11 by 17s, place these things in, and try adding, getting them ready so that we can try adding some silhouettes and entourage tomorrow. Right. I'll make these packs available to you guys on Canvas by tomorrow. Okay. All right. So it's honor system. I'm not going to collect work. I just want you to try this stuff out. So again, if you're going to have some issues, we know while we're, we can use class time to actually address them, and do troubleshooting. And two, so that you can just keep progressing through the week. All right. Because we're just going to keep adding and building onto this as we go. All right. In the last remaining 3 minutes, let me just see if I can figure out how to do the warp or distort here. That's just annoying that I can't. Uh, let's see here. With I know there's a perspective tool. I've yet to ever see the perspective grid actually work the way anybody would anticipate it to work. It's like completely ass backwards. If you ever do anything with it, with the CAD environment, it's like you look at it and go, what the heck is going on here? But anyway, I guess I'm not going to find that so easily. I'll have to Google that later. All right. So again, I'll see most of you this afternoon at in studio at 2:40. We'll meet over Zoom today, but again in person if possible tomorrow. Again, if you can't meet in person, that's fine. You're not going to be penalized for it. I understand. For some of you, that'll be probably consistently. You won't be able to meet in person. For some of you, that just might mean from time to time. We'll always do multimodal, so I'll always have Zoom for those that just need to beam in from not being in person. Okay. So anyway, I look forward to seeing most of you this afternoon. We'll talk about more specifics about your precedent studies, and yeah, and then I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow morning. We can take a look at progress. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, of
Thank
course.
you. Thank you.
Right on. See you guys. See you guys later.